Fashionably late as ever, with Bob O'Neill on the team. We are back for another Grin Grappler. I forgot quite how extraordinary this overlay was, but it rules. Pop for the confirmed sheets handiwork on that front. Here we are, folks. Episode 2, month 2, whatever you may call this, of the Grin Grappler. Dustin Rhodes is our focus. We have 6 matches left. We have much to get into. But first, I've already mentioned him. Bobby, you're a little late. How you doing this evening, pal?
I'm doing well, man. I watched these matches earlier today. Excited to get into them.
Yeah, that's always good. It's a good sign. The Oracle of Wrestling. I know that you, like me, love you some Dustin Rhodes. Fired up to be here tonight, pal. Talk some Dustin.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We're gonna have some fun, I think. Alex, it appears that you are now just a member of this of this program, which works for me. How you doing tonight, pal?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you as always for having me back. Got a great wrestler to talk about here, and also some matches here that range from like classics to hidden gems and kind of everything in between. So I am fired up.
Indeed, it's a really an Oracle. When I kind of put this lineup together, an Oracle pointed out to me a tag match in each act, right? And there's a kind of a good encapsulation of who he is as a worker. There's some really like nice understated TV wrestling. There's an epic in there at the end that's like the kind of classical kind of 5-star affair, so to speak. So we have much to get into. Firstly, though, this does have to be said. I want to give you the chance to talk about this briefly, Alex, because this was hilarious. Last time we did this, a month ago, we talked about Samoa Joe, and it was a running bit on here, right? Like this running bit about Samoa Joe and what he's going to do next. I don't think any of us quite had the predictions correct in terms of him being the Ring of Honor television champion. About 4 days after our show, Alex, you was there at the Supercard of Honor for Joe's return. It's been a weird month. I'm assuming this is not going to be a trend. I'm assuming Dustin isn't going to beat Gresham for the world title here coming up shortly. I don't know, though. Time will tell. Alex, very, very quickly, because you were there, that must have been kind of weird, right? We talked about it, and then there he was at Supercard.
Yeah, it was interesting. That whole night was interesting, to say the least. Tony coming in and making sure everyone knew who was in charge now. And the crowd was obviously kind of blown up after the FTR Briscoes match, and it took a while kind of for everyone to get back into it. And it was kind of funny because the tried and true spot of the referee kicking out the evil manager from ringside when he kicked out Chavo, that's when everyone really got into Bandito and Gresham, and everyone was kind of into it. And then at the end, they did like that ring of fire, like the flames are coming up, and everyone's like, okay. And then Joe came out and was just, well, there it is. He's here. And it was cool. I did laugh immediately just thinking about, well, we just kind of joked about this the other day. Did not see it going where they were going to make Lethal I don't know what ROH is going to be, but if he's going to be the top heel there, and is he feuding with Joe on AEW TV?
Kind of, yeah. Kind of. He has Satnam Singh by his side and Sanjay Dutt, and there's a whole bunch of things going on over there. It's another topic for another day.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if this became a thing, though? Like the month after we talk about it, just craziness happens. Dustin goes back to the Fed and wins the IC title or something. I don't know.
Yeah. You were saying him beating Gresham. I think he's literally 2 Greshams put together, so that'd be pretty easy for him. But I'm trying to think of who we could do on the next one that would be like just absolutely startling for some kind of career reinvigoration.
Well, folks, let me tell you, the lineup for who could be next month's Grin Grappler is quite extraordinary. So we'll have some options on that front. Okay, let's get into Dustin here. So I know for a fact, we're all fans of Dustin. I know Bobby. I vividly remember, Bob, you being just distraught at one point when you felt Dustin was washed at the end of his Fed run, which has aged hilariously because he just came back at some point and was like, okay, I guess he's back. We'll get into that later. Let's all kind of set the stage here by talking about Dustin Rhodes from a fan's perspective, just overall big picture. Oracle, I'll go to you first. Dustin Rhodes and kind of, before we'll put a bow on it at the end, but just to kind of set the stage, what he's been here for you as a fan of wrestling. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So the first time I ever really saw Dustin was when he came back as Goldust in 2002. And I became a pretty big fan of his with the Book Dust tag because I was a huge Booker T fan, and then Goldust and they were just a really great pairing. They were super over. Of course, we'll be talking about one of their tags tonight. The electrocution gimmick. I was 10 years old, buddy. That popped me huge. He played that so well. And then I kind of, it was like at the end of 03 that he left because he was like teaming with Lance Storm or something or something weird like that.
Yeah.
Then he went to TNA.
Indeed.
04 to 06 TNA Talk. I remember like the Raven program and stuff like that.
We didn't. I was kind of disappointed we didn't have any Black Rain on the lineup.
Yeah.
Cone room floor, brother. Cone room floor.
I definitely remember Black Rain. But I became like a really huge fan of his after I took part in the WCW Smarks Choice poll in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like right at the onset of the footage explosion.
Yeah.
Back when YouTube and Daily Motion and such were like the Wild Wild West, and like anything was uploaded and you could find anything without like, the copyright strikes and whatnot, and everything was all over the place and you could find it with it, without even having to download anything because YouTube and Daily Motion were these new like gems of, discovery basically. And, so like I remember just watching like the whole Stud Stable feud from '94, and watching obviously a lot of his more talked about matches from the early '90s, like the Austin match from Havoc '91. Of course, the tag we'll be talking about from Clash of Champions. All those Dangerous Alliance tags and singles matches and whatnot, and I just became a huge fan of his work. And he was already back in WWE, and that year he worked in ECW, WWE's ECW, and had an awesome TV feud with Sheamus that really put Sheamus on the map, I think, like in terms of like his in-ring abilities. Because at the time, I mean, like I was only just getting into like the online fandom, so like I didn't know anything of Sheamus other than some goofy guy with a haircut, and but like they had this great feud where they beat the shit out of each other, and Dustin was having like great matches with William Regal on Superstars, and like just that whole run. And he had like a pretty good indie run, and then he came back and had, of course, the classic run with Cody as a tag team and so on and so forth. But that period about 12 or 13 years ago, I became a huge fan of his work, and just kind of been a mega fan of his since then.
Alex, what about you? I know that there's one match on here that you're a mega fan of, but kind of broad strokes, your Dustin Rhodes fandom. Go ahead.
So I have been watching wrestling since literally as long as I can remember, and I remember there's a Ramones documentary where Rob Zombie said about the Ramones that they were just always around and always great, so you took them for granted a lot of the time. And I think that is kind of a good analogy for Dustin, because as long as I can remember my life, he's been around. I remember him as the Natural in WCW, and then obviously the vignettes. I didn't know that was him when it was Goldust because he had the long hair. That was the big reveal when he got in the ring. He pulled it off, and I'd be like, "Wait a minute, that's Dusty Rhodes' kid." I remember Goldust. That's probably most well because he had the coolest figures at the time, like the Jackson figures they made of him. His was, as from an aesthetic standpoint, were the coolest. And then I remember, being 10, 11, 12 during the Attitude Era. People always talk about him during the Attitude Era as Goldust, and they gloss over the fact that for like years he was just wearing like bondage and S&M gear on Monday nights and had like ball gags and just did weird shit. But remember, he had a really good feud with Vader at that time that stuck out as a kid. They opened the '98 Rumble and had a fucking banger. And
this is great. The Vader bomb with Luna on the back.
The place just goes ballistic. It's fantastic. But yeah, I remember that. I remember the Born Again shit was weird, and his run in WWE in the late '90s is a lot more up and down than people like to remember. But then, yeah, when he came back in '02 and then had that extremely unlikely team with Booker T, that that was probably, I was 14, 15 at the time, and I remember that was probably my most obsessive period as a WWE fan. It was like Monday Night Raw all the time, and I remember they were one of my favorite acts. And then, I remember him going to TNA. He, in a random trivia question that'll come up someday, he wrestled Eric Watts as Dustin Rhodes on a pay-per-view match in TNA.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's not good. Dustin's not a miracle worker. And this is 2005 Eric Watts. This isn't even 92.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's also one of those guys that, as wrestling fans, we've literally watched like his rise and fall, like his demons play out in front of us, because like he was always pretty candid about his issues with substance and things going on in his life. And I remember he was one of the guys that, though it didn't really come up when it resurfaced recently, but I remember he was one of the huge offenders in the plane ride from hell. Like he got, I don't remember if he got fired, but I remember that was like a really big black eye on him for a while. And then he just seems to get better and better. I think it's, I remember in the 2010s, he would show up every now and then, but he had like a full run. And he's just a guy that's great. And as a fan, a lot of memories of different matches he had, but he's someone that's really easy to take for granted just because he has been around forever.
There's an interesting interview. I think he did it when they were revealing AEW's new figures, where, you mentioned the action thing. He's very aware. Someone told him in the Goldust run of like how easily you can multiply figures by changing little things on your gear. And like, if you look at AEW has like 150 wrestlers, and he's already got 2 of those things out there. So God bless him. He figured that out, man. He was as aware as you was about how cool his figures were. Bobby, you're known for having many great action figures. Give me your rundown of your Dustin fandom. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like Oracle, like my first exposure to him was when he came back in 2002, and just really loved the tag team with Booker T. The electrocution stuff was great. And then, like I kind of followed him at TNA. He wasn't like someone that I was going out of my way to watch there, but he'd be on when the show's on, so like he was fine. And then, just kind of didn't see him for a while because I was taking a break from wrestling, and then I didn't really see him again until he came back with Cody stuff, and that was very good. And then this is kind of a good guy to have around. Like, I liked him in Truth as tag team. Just, good TV worker, just a guy that I enjoyed watching, kind of carrying over from when I enjoyed watching him his first run that I saw there. And then, he was still good. And then, I always liked him. Then 2018 or whatever, he faced John Cena on Raw. It was bad. I'm like,
That's what it was.
I guess he's not good anymore.
Yeah.
And he has proved me wrong since then. So.
Yeah, little do we know that John was the one that was washed. I'm kind of on the same line as Oracle here, not quite to the extreme, or not even close to extreme. Honestly, Oracle referenced DCW and Superstars programs that I now need to watch, but he was a revelation for me in like when in the network era, just going back and watching the WCW stuff. I just couldn't believe how good he was, and like when you watch that stuff, it makes you appreciate his last decade even more because you realize how much of it's the same, how smooth he still is, how good his offense still looks, how great his punch still is, so on and so forth. Before we went on here, I was talking to Oracle about it. It's like, guys, when we get analytical here, you may lose sight of this, but the biggest thing for me of doing this, I just love watching that dude wrestle. He's just an absolute joy to watch. Even if he may not have like a collection of classics compared to some of the wrestlers will do. He's just enjoyable to watch every time, whether it's a 6-minute TV match or a 20-minute pay-per-view match. So that's the big thing for me. Now, let's get into some specifics here, okay? So, folks, if you don't know, the Grin Grappler, we take a career, we break it into 3 acts, we pick 2 matches from each act. They are generally the good matches, okay? I am not here to watch bad wrestling. We're aware that there were some bad matches. We know. You don't have to inform us. We're aware. But that we're generally striving to enjoy these, folks, okay? So, let's get into Act 1. Your kind of natural fit here. The natural. Here he is, early 90s WCW. A promotion in a very interesting spot business-wise, but I think one that artistically produced a lot of good wrestling that's kind of lost in history. I know Oracle and I enjoy it very, very much, and it's kind of there's a lot of folks just don't know about this kind of middle time between, Glory Days NWA and then Glory Days NWO, right? There's like that sweet spot where I love the product. Oracle, best you can, set the scene here for Act 1 as we get into the natural and kind of young babyface Dustin Rhodes. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Dustin debuted in '88, and he was working Florida at the time, right?
Yep.
Basically, yeah. Well, no, I think he was in NWA right first, and then he went to, and then
'Cause he
Dusty
went-
left at the end of '88 after
Yeah.
Starrcade, and then
Dusty tried to wrestle in
Coffee,
Florida.
and then they were in Florida in '89,
Yeah.
right? Okay,
He had a cup of coffee for Vince in '90.
that's right. Yeah, he did. Because they did the Dusty and
$1 Million Man.
DiBiase feud,
Yeah.
and Dustin was in the tag match, and they had the 15-minute or the 10-minute challenge, whatever. Yeah,
Mhm.
both good matches, by the way.
Yeah.
I love Dustin's
The,
WF run. The first one was like a year, and people remember so much from it, just because he was great.
Different time, bro. Very different time.
Yeah,
it's been a
10-minute
decade there
challenge,
now.
I think it was, whatever it was. That's a good match with DiBiase, and then the tag match from the Rumble '91 where Virgil turns babyface is also good. He goes to WCW in the spring of '91, I think, late spring, early
you're
summer,
right.
and
Yeah.
I believe he's involved in the Brian Pillman mask angle and those tag matches there with what I can't remember the specifics of that. But Dustin starts, obviously Dusty kind of comes with him and working behind the scenes and doing some commentary and stuff, and he ends up getting a big kind of mid card program with Steve Austin.
Yeah.
They have pretty well known and relatively well known and talked about singles match with Austin at Halloween Havoc '91, at least within the circles of internet wrestling nerddom.
One of MJF's favorites, by the way.
Okay, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I think they had I think there was like a double blade job in that match, if I'm not mistaken.
Please.
Which was a rarity at the time in WCW.
Yeah.
At least I think it was. Although I know a lot of people bled in War Games '92, but
was this Bill Watts era?
No, this is late Jim Herd, right before Kip Allen Fry came in.
Yeah.
And so Dustin's he's basically like, even at this stage, he's the top mid card babyface, and he and Barry Windham become a tag team.
Yeah.
And at Halloween Havoc, the same show, he and Austin have their sort of hidden gem of a match, and in some ways, there's a great angle where the Enforcers, Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko, come in and attack Barry Windham right outside at the entrance of the UTC Chattanooga Roundhouse, because Halloween Havoc '91 was in Chattanooga, and I recognize it every time I see it because of the hillside and the steps.
That rolls.
Awesome.
So it pops me every time. And Barry's getting out of his nice car or whatever, and Larry Zbyszko comes in and shoves the car door on Barry's arm and hand, and Dustin pushes Barry into the passenger seat, and they go driving off to the hospital. I'm guessing Erlanger, since it's right down the road. But
stop off for some cheesecake at the City Cafe.
There you go. Yeah, so that's a setup for the first match we have.
Yes.
Going into the Clash of Champions, which is a very eventful show.
Yes, it is.
To sort of wrap things up in my long-winded ass, Dustin is basically the number one mid-card babyface, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he really is. At this point, Sting's the number one babyface overall at this time, but Dustin's basically number one mid-card babyface. Sting
has an eventful night. There is a very famous angle on this Clash Champions with Rick Rude, and he comes back to the building and they have this incredible sprint. It's one of those. It's a really important show in WCW, kind of firing back after Lucas and Flair, right? It's kind of them retooling somewhat. Obviously, they're still going to have a lot of struggles ahead, but it's a big show for them. As you said, Clash Champions 17. Okay, now we'll get into it. By the way, the angle you mentioned, Oracle? That's the angle that inspires Larry's incredible all-time great nickname, the Cruncher, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Havoc '91 basically sort of sets up the entire beginning of the Dangerous Alliance, because Rick Rude, the Howling Phantom, and
of course,
and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
I believe it's also the first show that Bischoff was like live on air as a personality, if I'm not mistaken.
Rick Rude's first promo, and he immediately says that Sting looks bigger on TV. Brave, man. Dude's got balls.
Might have been there at Bash '91, but it's close to Eric's TV debut.
It's a pivotal time. So,
Yes.
folks, Oracle set the scene. Clash Champion 17. Wyndham, who is injury, is unable to wrestle. So, in his place, there is a mystery partner. It is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. They are opposite the Enforcers of Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko, who, as you know, obviously eventually Dangerous Alliance, and that all kind of blends together, right? It's a special match. One thing I quickly want to note before we get into the kind of details here. It's wild, man. Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone are on commentary for this thing. They just did his match with Punk. Like, this is over 30 years ago. Like, that is outrageous. You know, Jim especially sounds very, very different, but it's still wild to think about. The reaction to Steamboat, both from the crowd and Arn himself, is extraordinary. They get into an epic match. Alex, what did you think of this memorable tag title match?
Was this Steamboat's return from WWF?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Where has he been in the middle, Oracle? Has he just been inactive?
So he left WCW in the summer of '89. Then he went back to WWF in '91, and then he's returned here in November of '91 to WCW.
Okay.
Arn Anderson yelling, "Not Ricky Steamboat," was absolutely fantastic. But man, when him and Zbyszko are walking down the ramp, I'm like, those are pro wrestlers right there, man. The barrel chest, all the oil and shit. Furious pace for Zbyszko. His matches usually don't get going until 17 minutes in, so that was surprising. I did the outfit that they have Steamboat in is great, and the crowd just absolutely loses their shit. I'm trying to remember. It's it's a standard WCW style tag match, and that is meant as a very, very good thing. It's like you were saying, history is a weird thing because like not all of WCW was good. Even like during its most money making years, the shows weren't entirely good, that type of thing. But there is like this sweet spot of 91, 92, even some of 93. That's just like those pay-per-views are all just fantastic. And the Clash of the Champions are all just like on the money, and which is funny because it's like one of their lowest time periods. But this is a good example of it. And it's, for tremendous workers. You have on the good guy side two of the better performing baby faces of their times, especially in the case of Steamboat. And then Arn is great. Zbyszko, like the facial expressions in this are just fantastic. Something that I'll come back to throughout this is, we don't really get subtle facial expressions in wrestling anymore. And Dustin was so freaking good at them. Yeah. Like in all these matches, you can just kind of read his mindset or like what his, going into this, what his thoughts are just by his face. And in this, you can tell he's kind of trepidatious, and then he takes the big plastic lizard head off and he's like, "Yeah, baby, you're in trouble now." I love the finish of this too with I hated as a kid the over the top rope disqualification, but I've realized like watching as an adult, like that gives you so many things to do as like a heel in a match to like piss off the crowd and stuff. So I love that Zbyszko tries to take the cheap way out in this, and they end up still losing the belts. It's a fantastic piece of business.
Yeah, it's that sweet spot. Is like it's still very much Southern wrestling, but they're attempting to be national enough that you have these kind of like this all-star roster executing it. It's a really weird time. This, as you said,
at the end of this, they're like. JR's like, the new tag team champions, The Natural and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Coming up next, a feature on Jushin Thunder Liger. I was like, wait, what?
You see that's the perfect example. Exactly that. It's just it's a classic WCW tag, but it's just the heat makes it feel so special. And God bless Arn, I think, is the lead in this regard, but the heels just keep feeding. That shine goes on, man. They like tease a cut off on Dustin, and he just shines again, knocks them both out. It's incredible. There's that spot that I want to say FTR have brought back in the last couple of years that Arn used to do all the time, where the double down would be they'd clash heads in the corner. That deal where that like went away for like 20 years, didn't it? It rules, and they do it here. And when they do that, the place starts rumbling. It's incredible. I mean, it's absolutely electric. Dustin's big hot tag. Bobby, you were so fired up after this. You texted me immediately and said you were pumping your fist violently. You did not say violently. I've added that part. But what a blast, huh? Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I thought it ruled, man. Like the reveal of Ricky Steamboat, and the crowd was just so into it the whole time too, and that just adds so much. And that's the thing about, like, I tweeted about a little bit, like, all the WCW I've watched before NWO, the crowds are just so hot for it.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know if that's, the markets they're running or what, but like, and the crowds are still good when the NWO comes, but it's different, obviously. Yeah, I mean, just, they kept it simple. They did the heels cut off half the ring, and that always works. And it worked for me, man. It was excellent.
Oracle, last night you said to me something that really struck me so much so I rewatched it. As I told you before we went on here, you said, I don't know where you stand on this show, but I think this Arn Anderson's performance here may be one of the greatest in wrestling history. And when you say that, especially, it carries weight in mine because I know how much you've seen. Expand on that and expand on the match itself, Oracle. Go ahead.
It's just Arn, just like he was always gifted at this, but he's an example of someone who knows how to portray his character in a match extremely well.
Yeah.
And change his like emotions and his facial expressions and time them perfectly. And like as Alex pointed out, Ricky Steamboat. But my favorite part of the whole match when they're on the floor after like halfway through the shine, Arn looks at Larry Briscoe and goes, he's just a man. He's just a man. And it's just it's incredible. And like Arn's doing his typical, like shit like that after he gets a spot and like doing like the thumbs up and like mocking the crowd. He's just he makes this match so much. Like all four guys are great, but Arn is just spectacular in this. Like just his his work overall, his stooging, his bumping, his facial expressions, his cutoffs, his timing, that head collision that you pointed out on the atomic drop that looked awesome. Good camera angle on that too.
His sunset flip, I'm not going to go down. Arn always had one of the best.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, outstanding. Yeah, he was just incredible in this. The whole match is great. It's one of the great matches in the history of WCW. I think Lost and PWO actually had it as like his best match from the States, or like one of his 2 or 3 best matches from the States in the 90s.
That rules.
Which is like that's pretty high praise from a guy who's seen a lot of footage.
Yeah.
But just an amazing match, and Dustin is great here. Just as like someone working the apron. This is kind of a good example of him working the apron.
Yeah.
Being kind of that, young line in there with Ricky Steamboat, because Rick, Steamboat does, the big FIP spot. And Dustin's just great on the apron, has a great hot tag. Really shows his charisma in this. Just overall one of the great matches in the 90s for sure.
Absolutely. And just a genuine WCW classic. Folks, if you've never seen it, I recommend it great. It's timeless, right? What they do here is absolutely timeless. Especially if you're a big FTR fan and what they're doing right now, I think you'll have a lot of fun watching this. And Bobby probably can speak to that, right, Bob? Like there's a lot of crossover there in your enjoyment. The biggest thing from a Dustin perspective here is he's in there with 3 absolute pros, 2 of which are like 15 years plus deep, and Arn, who is the oldest 8-year veteran ever, or whatever he is at this point, because he's done the Horseman run and he's been, he's on Anderson, man. Is what he is. So he just belongs. He's great in this. This is so okay. Match 1, an absolute hit. Can't recommend it enough. Okay, match 2 of Act 1. We jump 3 years forward. We are still at Clash of Champions, but it is a very different WCW. We land in. We're in Jacksonville, Florida. Interestingly enough, yes, indeed. Dustin is fresh off the memorable War Games program that Noah Rock Live talks about on many a late night grin, right? And the whole thing with Colonel Rock Parker and that's another conversation for another day that we've already had, quite frankly. But it's a great
yeah,
feud.
I'll say one thing about it. It's the last great Southern feud on a national stage.
There you go. And when you framed it that way, I enjoyed it a lot more than I did before. So Vader is on the road to Hulk Hogan. He's about to wrestle at Super Bowl. This is like 3 months before that, but they're very much established number 1 contender. Of course, he does have to wait because the Butcher, Brutus Beefcake, is going to get his rightful shot at Starrcade. So, nonetheless, this may be, and look, I understand that it's not perfect and it kind of falls off slightly, but this may be like the biggest hidden gem of all in terms of WCW. No one talks about this match, and it is incredible. Alex, you messaged me earlier. You were so fired up about it. This first Paul's Bear, this is electric. And talk to this match. It is absolutely extraordinary. Vader and Dustin Rhodes, Clash of Champions 29. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, you got one of the all-time wrestling themes with Vader's din, 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 din.
Yes.
Well, and I was talking about Dustin's facial expressions too. This one's a classic example because he gets in there, he takes his gear off, and he's just kind of like, well, fuck. Like, he knows he's in there with a big dude, and he's like, he starts at trying to wrestle him, and then that doesn't work, and you can see like, well, this isn't going to work. I've just got to throw myself at him, and he, double legs him and just starts beating the shit out of Vader, and the place just goes absolutely nuts for it. And Vader, kind of like Dustin, I think enough people say like he's great, but they don't say why he's great. And Vader was just so awesome at being this big bully, big man, because a lot of people say this is what he was, but because he bumps when he goes down, he looks like a guy that doesn't know how to fall down because he's not used to doing it, and that adds so much to the match. So when Dustin's like taking him off his feet, he clotheslines him over the top rope, and Vader's just like, "What's going on?" It's so good, and yeah, you can tell the crowd is like kind of expecting Vader just to roll over him. So when he starts like having his way with Vader, it's just fantastic. And you've got some of the classic Vader spots in here. The one he used to do with Sting, where he jumps off the second rope, and so he can power slam him in midair.
Yes,
That's a fantastic one. Harley Race gets bumped because otherwise he doesn't know what to do with himself. I did notice
Always gets bumped. It rolls.
I screamed when Dustin vertical suplexed Vader. I was just like, because it's not like he doesn't like work for it, and it's not like a big Hogan Andre thing. He just picks him up and suplexes him. It's excellent. And the crowd was like, especially in the first half of the match, every pinfall that Dustin got, you could see people getting up thinking that he was going to win. And it's just, there's certain aspects of that are lost. The second time I screamed at my TV during this is going back to the top rope thing. Harley has the ref distracted. Dustin goes for the Bulldog. Vader just throws him over the top rope.
Crazy bump.
Yeah, it's
insane cough.
It's wild. What were the two things I have written down here? Okay. The wheelbarrow slam, I don't remember Vader ever using that as a finish, and he hits it so impactfully that it looks like death, and the crowd just is like, oh, like they know that's it when he hits it. Yeah. And then Randy Anderson's the ref here, and he, like, and by we I mean me specifically, it can be a bit harsh on refs of today for wanting to get their own shit in. This guy looks like what a ref would be like if professional wrestling was a real sport. Like, he's kind of like, there's a part in the match where Dustin won't get off Vader in the corner, and he like gets on the second rope and pushes his back into Dustin to get him to back away. And it's like, he doesn't then like make all these goofy faces and jump around. It's just like, if this was a real sport, a ref would have to enforce it like this, like they do in football when they separate guys. So he's fantastic. And then finally, just in case you didn't know what era of WCW you were in and who was in charge, brother, you get the Jim Duggan run in at the end, baby.
Yeah.
Wasn't that a perfect encapsulation of WCW? This great match with this great baby face, and here comes Jim Duggan to save the day. Here we go,
And the crowd does not care.
No,
they're like, this, no. But yeah, when I messaged you, my general tone was like, how the hell have I never seen this, nor have I heard of this?
As soon as we were putting this together, that was one that I immediately put in, because it's like, no, I can't believe how underrated. I think it's the era of WCW is, because as much as we just said that the era we enjoy is forgotten, the most forgotten era may be the pre-NWO Hogan run, where he is just doing terrible wrestling at every turn, and it's like the
beating
promotion's
everyone.
The promotion's poisoned kind of overall by Hogan's influence, and it slowly kind of blends over the promotion. That opening you were talking about, like, everyone knows the Vader's punches in the corner, right? Like, he whacks guys in the corner. We know what it is. He gets guys, he clubs them. Even still, these two are extreme. He hit him with one right hand, hits him with the left hand. Dustin takes like a face bump on one of these. He hits him so hard. Then he spits at him, and that face expression you're talking about, like that one of like, well, listen, I may get my ass kicked, but I ain't letting this dude spit in my face. And the place explodes. Just extraordinary scenes. Bobby, Vader strikes me as a wrestler literally designed to pop you. And I know you've enjoyed everything you've seen. Wasn't this fun?
Yeah, this was awesome. And like, I mean, I knew I was gonna like it, but yeah, I'd never heard of it either. Like, it's not a match that people really talk about. But yeah, that beginning when Dustin just starts beating the shit out of him was incredible. And just yeah, I want more people to be aware of this. So hopefully, you're watching this, you go watch it after or whatever. Because yeah, it was excellent.
It has the issue, and I think issue overstates it because I love the match, but there is certainly a point where it's like peaked. Like they have that weird deal where it appears that Vader like wins Dustin with a Vader bomb and like lifts his shoulder up for him. It looks like Dustin's trying not to die. It's really wild scenes. By the way, one spot before I throw this to Oracle. What about when Vader like throws himself in the corner and Dustin just catches him? The way that he catches him is absurd. Oracle, a hidden gem here in the world of Clash of Champions. What did you think, pal?
Yeah, so this was a match that I think was kind of discovered, or at least rediscovered, when we did the Smarks Choice Bowl. It finished 26 overall of the top 100 matches.
There you go.
I haven't seen it in years. I've seen it a handful of times, but I've not seen it in probably close to 10 years. It holds up. This is like, it's honestly probably the best WCW match for like maybe an entire year. There's that Stars and Stripes tag I showed you one time on here several months back. That's really, really good.
You got the Cactus and Kevin Sullivan against the Nasty Boys match that same year. That would be my.
That's true.
projection.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I was thinking more along the lines of like October 94 to October 95.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. But yes, those Cactus and those Cactus tags are definitely up there. At least for, from the entirety of 94. 94 is actually a really loaded year through about September.
Yeah.
Brother.
Yeah, brother. But this was incredible. Like Vader's shit talk and then Dustin tackling. Tony Schiavone is losing his fucking mind on commentary. Like the crowd is completely losing their minds. Like it rules. And like, you know what? Maybe I'm like not remembering certain things, but I see way too many baby faces in wrestling nowadays who get like humiliated and like spit in the face and like not do anything about it. Like, not everybody's Mick Foley, Not everybody can wait, 6 to 9 months and then bring out Cactus Jack, Like, if a babyface gets spit in the face, yeah, they might, they might think, oh man, I'm gonna get my ass kicked, but I'm gonna, do something about it. I see way too many baby faces nowadays that are like, will like take these and part of it's booking, but like, it's like, come on, man. Somebody's got to be like, that don't work for me, brother.
Yeah.
Like I'm not doing that shit. Like I'm gonna, it's about protecting your character and stuff. But
I mean, in WWE specifically, they've cultivated it. Like they've made a culture to where people don't think to ask, why would that work for my character, or why would that wouldn't not? Yeah. Drew McIntyre is a sword and hasn't stabbed anybody with it. Like it's just, yeah. I know exactly what you're saying. Like Ricochet is a perfect example. Right. Like heels can be as mean to him as possible, and he won't do anything about it.
Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, now you're just a wuss, man. Like, like no one's gonna cheer you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's a small thing that just kind of stood out to me. But the match, man, this match rules, man. Like there's it does kind of go through a little bit of a lull before ends up on a really nice finish. But oh man, the bulldog counter is amazing. Just an incredible bump. Dustin took all sorts of crazy bumps back then. I mean, he still does now, but like he was taking all these crazy bumps in like early 90s WCW, like missing cross bodies and getting thrown out to the floor, like crazy shit. For the time.
He's a big guy too, man. He's a real big guy,
And another thing about Dustin being able to take down Vader is like it's believable because Dustin's a big fucking dude.
Mm-hmm.
So like, Vader plays it perfectly, like Alex pointed out, but Dustin's also a big dude and can probably, and can believably take care of himself in the context of the story. So, this match ruled. Another thing where I sound like I'm an old man shouting at the clouds, but that finish was awesome. Nowadays, it'd be like a near fall.
Yeah.
For a lot of wrestlers, I think it'd probably be a near fall, but that was just like a perfect finish. Just like bam, wheelbarrow slam, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That's a move that's become so transitional, or like feeds into arm drags or some shit. But like,
right,
this is an example of how devastating it can look. Vader just hoofs him up and fuck you, and then just like throws him down on his face. It's
yeah,
excellent.
it ruled, man. It ruled.
Yeah,
This match holds up. It's great. It's interesting because I forget how narrow sort of certain bubbles of wrestling fandom are, because that's a pretty well known match. If you're on like PWO or like
right.
Deathlight Driver, but it's not necessarily one that's like, and even now it's not talked about a ton because people still talk more about the Studs Table feud or the Goldust character or whatever.
Just falls in that kind of middle
it's
ground.
Interesting, but there's, I mean, because I just pulled up the final poll from that Smarks Choice project in 2009, and there's several gyms that I still think would be considered that were like everybody touted that entire year, that I think is just kind of people sort of forgot about.
Hogan and WCW up until the NWO has become, like, through history, this era that everything sucked. Like, people just that's
Exactly.
something people have come to believe, and it's obviously not true. Like, even in 95 and 96, they're like, Starrcade 95 is awesome, but everyone, because Hogan beat everybody, it was just kind of like, eh.
Yeah, it's whole eras kind of get branded a certain way, and that's the way history treats them effectively. Someone in the chat asked, just to reiterate, that's Clash of Champions 29, November 94, right? So on the network or the Peacock gimmick. Okay, Act 1. Let's put a bar on Act 1. Couple other classics. Feel free to chip in once. And these are ones that I noted down here. War Games 92 with the Dangerous Alliance is obviously probably my favorite War Games match. There's a Jake Roberts TV match, Oracle, that you and I have talked about on Saturday night, that is really good.
It might have been the Labor Day weekend, Saturday night of 92.
There you go.
Or maybe a few weeks before that, so August or September 92.
There you go. The Bunkhouse Buck Brawl from, is it Stampede 94? Stampede, is it?
They had two really good matches. One I like better. I can't remember which one is which.
Yeah.
Seek it out. They have one on Spring Stampede and one on Slamboree.
Slamboree, yeah. And there's that Clash Trios from about 2 months after our first match here, the January 92 Clash. They have like the trios with the Dangerous Alliance guys, and that one's a lot of fun. So any other matches, Oracle, I know you're the king on this front. Any other matches from Act 1 that you would kind of add to the list if you want to do a more extensive look?
WCW used to do this thing called a Nintendo Challenge Series.
Pop.
And there's a Dustin Rick Rude match from TV that's outstanding in 92.
Oh, yes.
It's the one where like Medusa is like, I think it's the one where Medusa is like sort of like trying to be like a sexual distraction for Dustin on the outside. There's all kinds of fun play there. But yeah, the match is great. Because I think there's like a pre-match promo where she's like, I could do things to you, kid, or something.
It's a shame that when they do like their program in '93, Rude's done.
Yeah.
Such a shame.
They have a 30-minute Iron Man. That's okay, but it's not great. Of course, the Austin match I pointed out from Havoc 91. There's another Vader match from Saturday night in late 92. That's definitely worth seeking out.
Is that King of Cable? Is it the King of Cable tournament?
That is King of Cable tournament. Yes, I think it's a Saturday night King of Cable tournament match. I think so.
Okay.
There's
someone called out in the comments the King of the Road from Uncensored 95. While not a good match, that is a very fascinating piece of business just to read about and know the backstory of.
Yes, absolutely.
It was Smash he wrestled, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ray Darso. Yeah. As the blacktop bully at the time.
Indeed, yeah.
That's right. The blacktop
all
failure.
Kinds of stuff. There's multiple Dangerous Alliance tags. Tag teams is very well. I mean, just Dustin's got a lot of There's an Arn singles match from the January '92 that's outstanding.
There you go.
I think from Saturday night, the first Saturday night from '92, if I'm not mistaken.
Just think, Oracle. You know when they're having that match there in January 1992? If only they'd have known that in 30 years, in January 2022, he'll be leading Dustin out to wrestle Sammy Guevara for the TNT, the interim TNT. Just think, Oracle. If only they'd have known. Glory days, brother. Okay. I want to close Act 1 by quickly saying this, and I bring this up a lot, but it fascinates me, this what if, and I'll quickly touch on it because he had a great career as is, but if Hulk Hogan never comes into WCW, I firmly believe that Dustin is next up as the top babyface, and that is a fascinating kind of timeline to explore because, like, Flair's the champ, and Flair's going to turn heel inevitably because that's what Ric Flair does. He hates being a babyface.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine Dustin Rhodes chasing Ric Flair for the big title and having Dusty there to cut promos and telling that story? You've just got Dusty back on TV with the War Games match. It's all there. It's just so intriguing to think that if Hogan doesn't come in, everything changes for Dustin. His whole trajectory is different in my view. Alex, is that something you've ever kind of considered? That's a weird alternate timeline there, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you also have to take into consideration that WCW may not have seen 1996 if Hulk Hogan didn't come in. But yeah, it's I was thinking about that actually when I was watching those Clash matches about if there was a good Natural versus Ric Flair match, which I guess I'm not sure if there is, but yeah, it definitely seems like they were setting it up that way because Sting was kind of getting stale in '94, so it yeah. As far as those guys go, there's so many what ifs. I always think about Cactus too, like if things had been different, if he could have been a top heel in the company or whatnot. It's the '94, like '92 to '94 WCW roster is just fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Good question here from Four to a Suit, Bobby. I'm going to guess this one's aimed at you. Any cool nicknames for Hulk Hogan?
You actually call him the immoral Hulk Hogan.
Oh, good stuff, Bobby. Oracle.
You see that big grin on Bobby's face, and he just popped big for that.
Nothing like feeding a top baby face, bro. Feels great. Oracle, anything on the idea of the Natural as top baby face in WCW? Maybe with a big gold around his waist. What a fault, huh?
I think a Flair Dustin feud would have ruled. But yeah, it would have changed history for sure.
It's wild to think about. Nonetheless, speaking of things that would have changed, Act 2, Goldust. And obviously this is a weird one because Goldust is an iconic character, but he's not a character that naturally converted to like good matches. And like part of that isn't even him, it's the era, right? Like if you're a mid-card guy, it's just different. It's a different time. But we have two here, one of which I know, Alex, is a big one for you. Let's get straight to it because it is early enough in the character that we can kind of paint the picture best by talking about the first match, I think. The famed Hollywood Backlot Brawl from WrestleMania 12 with Roddy Piper. We just covered this show in more detail in the historical Oracle, so if you want to see more about the Iron Man and stuff, go there. Oracle covered it in detail, and we left this match kind of untouched. Alex, can you set the stage for this match and then transition into your immense fan of it? Because I know it's a big one for you, so go ahead, pal.
Absolutely. So yeah, Goldust debuted, I want to say September, October of '95. First match. Who else? Party Marty Jannetty. They trotted out to have him wrestle on In Your House pay-per-view. And then poor Scott Bigelow, man. He put over LT. They told him, you're going to get the title run, brother. It comes Survivor Series of that same year, and he's putting over Goldust in Washington, D.C. So, yeah, basically they debuted Goldust, and you could tell it's like today still. You can tell when Vince is like in on this idea that he has. Yeah. And so immediate like rocket push. And then he won the IC from Razor Ramon at Royal Rumble. And coming into this, it was supposed to be the rematch, Razor Ramon and Goldust in a Miami street fight. And so that was like one of the matches they were going to sell on. If you've ever seen the original WrestleMania 12 poster, Razor Ramon's on it, in fact, but he failed a drug test or something. I mean, he was on his way out anyway. Talk about what ifs. That guy stuck around. But so Roddy Piper had returned to the World Wrestling Federation after 2 years away or so. He was brought back after the dastardly Vader took out Commissioner Gorilla Monsoon. If you've never seen that segment, it's awesome because Vader gets in Monsoon's face, and Monsoon just starts giving him knife edge chops, and he's in a suit. It's outstanding. So Vader takes out Gorilla, and Vince brings back Piper to be the new president, the acting president. Piper's the one that sets up the Iron Man match, and then they switch from Razor to this direction with Goldust, where he comes out and how'd they get the IC belt off him? Do you remember, Oracle?
He was still the IC champ at the time.
Oh, okay. So, for some reason I thought it was Savio and Austin wrestled for, but that's for the $1 million belt, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Goldust comes out and he's doing his weird androgynous shit and just basically confronts Piper and picks a fight with him, and it's really interesting. And when I get to my thoughts on the end of this, I'll kind of circle back to it, but there are bylines and just kind of or through lines, excuse me, and parallels to today with the idea of the vet wrestling the new guy. Where in this case the new guy comes out and picks a fight with this guy. Of course, it's kind of weird because it's Goldust, and there's this really weird segment where he plays bagpipes mimicking oral sex quite graphically, and he slaps him, and Piper just tells him, fine, you want to fight, we'll fight. And the line is, and I'm going to make a man out of you. It's just tremendous. So we get to Anaheim, and for anyone that doesn't know, this is like legitimately in my top 10 matches of all time. If you can even call it a match, but it's just the Hollywood Backlot Brawl. I have the Piper DVD set that's on, so I was watching that, and I did laugh because the video package that plays before it, they made Michael Cole dub over it, so they didn't have to pay Todd Pettengill royalties for the original video package. And so, yeah, it's shot in a Hollywood backlot. It's, this is, how long ago is this? 26 years, something like that. And it's still one of the best. What Vince McMahon wants to do is make movies, and this is still one of the best examples of that. It's shot like handheld cameras in this Hollywood backlot. There's these actors watching and cheering. There's the catering truck and all that. There's this horrendously spray painted gold Cadillac that Goldust pulls up in. And it's just like, it is professional wrestling at its highest level in the terms of it's this ridiculous scenario. It's these ridiculous characters. There's this guy driving a gold Cadillac who's got his entire body painted gold in a skin tight jumpsuit. And there's this guy at the end of this alley waiting for him, like this old dude with a baseball bat, just like, bring it. And so he pulls up and they just get into a fight here. And I'm sure as y'all watched it, Piper hits him as hard as he possibly can in the face a couple times throughout this. And then it quickly breaks down. This part of the thing lasts like 5 minutes because Piper, cracks him in the head a few times. Goldust gets in his Cadillac, legitimately hits Piper with his car. Like, Piper does the thing where he jumps up on the hood, but still his legs like flail out from like behind him, and it's just chaos. And he takes off, and then you guys did the whole show, so, and for those of you who've seen it, you know that it's like segments throughout WrestleMania 12, and comedy and wrestling is talked about all the time these days about what's funny and what's not, and 98% of comedy and wrestling is not funny. It's like, it's what I guess people have convinced themselves are funny, or they feel like they're on a joke or something. And specifically, Vince McMahon's style of comedy is not funny. This is one of the rare exceptions, because what they do, Piper takes off in a white Bronco chasing him, and it's been about 2 years since the OJ chase. And so throughout the show, they intersperse clips of the OJ chase of the white Bronco. And Vince McMahon is not the greatest professional wrestling announcer of all time, but he's possibly the greatest straight man of all time. Because on commentary, he's like, this footage looks oddly familiar. And they, and it eventually leads to, it's right before the main event, because you see Diesel walking in the background. They come back to the arena, and it's one of those things, like, it makes sense why this happens, because Goldust is trying to get back to Marlena, and he's just like, I don't know what to do. This crazy guy's chasing me, and they fight out to the arena. And man, people have their stories about Roddy Piper, but this to me is one of the most badass images of him ever. Goldust is cowering away from him with like his hands down, and Piper just comes out and he's taping his fists up, and it's time to go to work, man. He takes him in the ring, and they basically just kind of have this schmoz, and it's a lot of the Goldust stuff. He's rubbing him, and then he kisses him at one point. But a lot of the criticisms of the Goldust character nowadays, and rightly, was that there was like rampant homophobia, and like the crowd booed him for that and whatnot. I don't think that's the case here. I think Piper is just like, all right, if that's what you want to do, and like he kisses him back and then beats the shit out of him, and he grabs him by the dick and like pulls, and the place just comes unglued. It looks like a fight, like a really down and dirty fight you would see in like an action movie or something. And um, when he grabs him by the dick, Vince is like, "Oh no, this is gonna get ugly." And I feel like this match here and this moment in time, like this like right here, I was watching again. This is the death of the new generation. It took Vince another 16 months or so to figure out what direction he wanted to take, but this happening, I think, just set into effect. 96 was still pretty tepid, but then 97 they started ramping it up, and I feel like you can point to this singular match as like a turning point for the company. But at the end of the day, it's just like, it's what I said. It's like pro wrestling at its highest. It's this insane scenario, these ridiculous characters, this like off-brand comedy that's actually funny, but then at the end of the day, it mixes in to this gumbo that looks like a real fight, and you can believe what's happening here, and there's no insulting of the intelligence. I mean, it's weird when he rips his suit off and he's got that negligee on underneath, but even then, like, the crowd's just going nuts because the good guy is getting comeuppance on the bad guy. This guy picked a fight with him, and he beat the shit out of him and embarrassed him for doing so. And my closing thought is, like I was saying, now with the old dudes, Undertaker comes back and beats everybody. Goldberg comes back and beats everybody. Brock comes back and beats everybody. I feel like with this, it was an example of a new guy challenging an old guy, and it just showed that the new guy wasn't ready for that level of competition yet. Like, he tried, he fought him, he just didn't have the club in the bag. He didn't have it to do it, and I don't know what the immediate fallout was, but in hardcore fans' eyes, it's like, well, he took Roddy Piper to the limit, so he's tougher than we give him credit for. So it's, as you can tell, I could write a tome on this match, but it's just a fascinating piece of business that's, to me, from the thematics, the cinematics that Vince so greatly wants to create, it's still one of their greatest achievements in terms of making something seem Hollywood, but still buyable in a physical sense. It's a Tarantino movie is basically what it becomes.
I love the point of, like, it's insane and it's crazy, but it's grounded by the sense that there's like real violence, like it's never like universe breaking. It always feels like pro wrestling in a wild way. It is worth noting, you mentioned the OJ piece. Now, Bruce Pritchard is someone that should not be trusted at any cost. But he has claimed multiple times that this was actually intended to be Roddy versus OJ in a professional wrestling match. He has claimed this. He has said they tried very desperately to put this together to pay him to do this. That is maybe the most insane what if of all. I don't know what that looks like. I believe he suggested that Roddy was going to try and shoot on him if this game would be, which even funnier.
And then Conrad said, "What would that sound like?"
There you go, Bobby. What do you think of the backlot brawl?
Yeah, I loved it. I was actually, I don't mind the cinematic matches in kind of as a whole that we saw the past couple of years. So to see this one and have it still hold up just like those, if not even better, was great. I kind of forgot about all the in-ring stuff that they did. Yeah, I remembered all the outside and the chase and stuff. But yeah, the in-ring stuff is good, tells a story. Yeah. And, I also kind of forgot they broke it up like that because I hadn't seen the show in a long time. And that's probably the right way to do that because otherwise you're just having people look at screens for 15 minutes. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Goldust hits Piper with the car, which was a lot of fun too. Yeah, just good stuff, man.
I had never seen the in-ring part of this. I had simply seen the brawl, and I was befuddled by it. Not only do they do stuff in the ring, they have like a psychologically sound professional wrestling match where he's working the leg, and it's like, hang on a second. The brawl obviously is iconic, as you mentioned, Alex. The punches. There's a couple in particular where it's like Roddy nailed him. It was crazy the sound those right hands made. Oracle, your thoughts on the Hollywood backlot brawl?
Yeah, the The part where they're in the back lot. Like one of the highlights are like the actors standing around on like the trailers, whatever, and like you can tell they're like kind of at some point. I think they like aren't sure if they're seeing something that's real or not, because like Roddy's so convincing, and he's like literally punching Dustin in the head as hard as he can, and then Roddy gets run over by a car, and it's like,
They're kind of laughing until he runs up and he hits the ball bat and smashes out that window, and they're like, yeah.
Right, exactly. They start to realize that this is not as playful as they were expecting, I guess. Yeah, they ended up. I remember they went into the ring, but like watching it now again, like Joe's right. They had like a full on like match, and the crowd does not pop. I think that's the loudest pop of the night when Piper makes his comeback in the ring and
he fires up
and basically swings him around on his, with his dick. That's the pop of the night, I think.
Yeah.
But this was a total blast, man. Like one of the most fun matches, I think, probably in the history of the company, and it stands out so much in that time period.
Yeah.
Because I've been watching all this shit I'm in like my 8th or 9th month of this thing now, and it stands out as totally unique, and I think Alex brings up a good point about it possibly being the
me too, yeah,
sort of uncrowned beginning of the Attitude Era and sort of the ending of New Generation.
Yeah.
Quick question for y'all. WrestleMania 12 is significant for one thing in my nerddom in terms of like aesthetics. It is the only WWE event or pay-per-view, to my knowledge, and I'm almost positive of this, where the canvas has a print on it. WCW is known for always having the event logo on it, and WrestleMania 12 is the only one for that. Do y'all like that? I always thought it kind of made WCW's rings pop.
I adore it, and I can't believe it isn't a more common thing.
Yeah, I like it.
I really can't. Like Rampage has it now, but there was the first episode of Rampage, they didn't do it after Cody promised it, and I was, let me tell you, I was quite embarrassingly mad about that. I was very frustrated. So
Cody's head might have been elsewhere at that time.
Fair. New York, brother. But yeah, no, I think that's a big thing of WCW's aesthetic for sure. Speaking of such, you mentioned about like where it represents, end of the new generation era and all that stuff. Like, it's crazy to think, we're talking about Dustin here, but it's crazy to think that in 6 months, Roddy's going to be walking out of Havoc, going face to face with Hollywood Hogan. Like, and at this point, when he's doing this match, Hollywood Hogan is not a thing. Like, it's
Dude,
just
think
fascinating
of where this show lands in history. I know it's like Sean's moment in time. It's like his moment in the sun. Austin's on the second match of this show. And like, what was it? 6 months from that, he was, Survivor Series was his big coming out match with Brett. And yet anything that like happens, Nash is gone after this, and 3 months later, the NWO happens and wrestling has changed forever. So it's just a fascinating point in time.
It's just, I love stuff like that, right? Because that's part of what makes this stuff interesting. Is it's just you never fully know, right? The pieces can be right in front of you. You never quite know how they're going to fall. It really is fascinating. Okay, match 2 of Act 2. He is alongside Booker T here against the team of Chris Jericho and Christian. They are the tag team champions. This is December 23rd, 2002, an episode of Raw. Jericho's in the midst of a feud with Shawn Michaels. By the way, worth saying, in this match, you have 3 full-time AEW talents 20 years later, as well as someone that often doesn't like AEW on his podcast, which fair. It's interesting to look back at, and honestly, you could argue 2 of the guys are as good, as good now as they were then. So, and even Jericho's made a comeback, so God bless him. This match is the least daring, the least memorable of the ones we covered. Fair to say, just go, we'll rank them later, but I think that's fair. But it's a real win in terms of structure. It's simple pro wrestling executed almost perfectly. So much so that by the end of it, the place is like rocking just for a very steady tag match. it makes for an interesting comparison with the first match we did too. Oracle, I had never seen this. I hadn't even heard about it. You were the one that suggested it to me for Act 2. I liked it a lot. What did you think of the tag title match here on Raw?
Yeah, so I remember watching this match when I was a kid because I never really put it together, but Daniel Bryan did the weak link angle. He was the weak link of Team Hell No in the Shield program or whatever. And I forgot that they did this with Dustin and Booker. And I remember watching this match as a kid and because I loved the Book Dust tag team.
Yeah.
But I couldn't remember. I was 10 years old. So I couldn't remember that they had done kind of the same deal here. So there's a nice little backstage segment where Jericho is dressing down Dustin and whatever to set up the match, and so they do a good job of building to that, and just especially the second half of this match where Dustin gets his big near falls and the hot tag, and it's about him proving that he's not the weak link. It's super fun to watch. The crowd eats it up. Of course, there's commentary stuff for JR is all worried about having to wrestle Lance Storm and William Regal in the main event.
I don't know, a wrestling move, King.
But yeah, this match was excellent. It's just a match I remember really well from that time period. From my probably. Honestly, I liked all four guys a ton at the time. So this was my favorite feud going at the time was Book Dustin, Jericho, and Christian when I was a kid. So it was just a really, really strong TV match. Crowd got into it. Dustin was great. Just his hot tag in general and just the way he would time all the spots and the finish was well done where he pulls it tight and Jericho's cracks hanging out, and JR and Lawler make typical early 2000s crack jokes, ha ha ha, but it was just a really good example of Dustin and his ability as a tag worker and a TV worker, and how he would just, go out and just have a killer match, just on a random episode of TV.
Yeah, I thought it was a great pick for that exact reason. It was really fun too that in each act we got to look at a Dustin hot tag. This one, he had a couple of different quirks from because this is kind of here he's the bizarre one, right? Where he's a babyface Goldust who's wacky, but in a more kind of fun babyface way than where they were just pushing the envelope and it's different here. They're a full comedy act, Tim and Booker, a great act, but that's what they are. Bobby, what do you think of the tag match here?
Yeah, it was awesome. I liked all four guys at the time. I still think they're all quite good now. And just kind of a simple thing, with Dustin being the weak link and just kind of pushing that and him proving that he wasn't. Just kind of because I don't think Oracle, did they feud? Were they in a feud? Or I know Jericho has other stuff going on, but I don't think they wrestled a ton.
They had they were kind of feuding all the tag teams at the time.
Yeah, right.
And I think Alex could probably help me out with this too, because the Dudleys reformed the Survivor Series,
yes,
and they were kind of involved with that, and RVD and Kane had just become a tag team, and then of course Storm and Regal were a team because Christian and Jericho became a tag team in the fall, and then Storm and Regal split off from Christian because they were in the Un-Americans. So it was kind of
Jericho was starting his feud with Shawn at this point because that was their program went end of December through April. So this might have been closer to a one-off or something. Because I remember,
they
had a
opened No Mercy 02,
yeah,
and that match was really good because remember the ropes broke. If you recall, the ropes broke at No Mercy 02. If I'm not mistaken,
a solid show all around.
Yes, absolutely. And they worked a really good 7 to 10 minute opener, and I think they had to shorten the length of the match because the ropes broke. If I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
But that's a really good opener, and that's worth checking out. They're the same teams opening No Mercy 2002. But
it's a strong one for sure. Alex, your thoughts on the tag?
Another hidden gem, one of those that I know I've seen it before because I said, this is my time period where I never miss Raw. But I think for lifers and people kind of old like myself, that period of WrestleMania 18 to WrestleMania 21 kind of all blends together, because it was kind of like you had 17 and then the year fallout of the invasion, and that's memorable for no good reason. And then like 18 to 21 was just kind of, they call it the ruthless aggression. 21, they went the direction with Batista and Cena, and things finally
Yeah.
felt different again. But
Kind of treading water before that, almost, right?
Mhm.
yeah. So like a lot of stuff like this is a reminder of how strong their roster was. It just falls in a strange place in history of like in the wake of Vince buying everything. And one thing that I was reminded of, and I love going back and watching 02, 03 Raws, how hot the crowds are, man. When's the last time you saw a crowd this rabid on Monday night? It's like and it's classic wrestling formula too, of like they're kind of into it at the beginning, they're getting more and more into it. By the end of the match, they're on their feet, like just losing their shit. Howled at Lawler and JR talking about the explosive confrontation to come between Triple H and Scott Steiner.
Oh yes.
That puts you back in a very, very specific moment in time when you hear that. But yeah, just great. Booker is obviously a fantastic tag wrestler, and Christian and Jericho. I liked Edge and Christian, like just from I liked when they were the dumb surfer dudes. I thought they were funny, but their thing is tag wrestlers was always, you never had heard of them having like the classic bell to bell ones. It's always ladder matches and shit.
Yes.
And I always thought Christian and Jericho had really potentially even better chemistry as just like straight tag team. And so, yeah, this is great. And also it's just kind of funny, they talk the shit about Goldust, so he gets the hot tag and then he wins by cheating. I thought that was good. And I went back and looked at the lineup for Raw on this. It got a full 18 minutes or so. And, this is back in the days where Raw matches, you got 4 minutes tops. So they definitely told them go out and burn the place down.
That's the one thing that's interesting. Those years you mentioned, like when they did the brand split, there were definitely people internally that wanted to kind of pull back in terms of the stuff they'd done in the Attitude Era, right? Like it's weird seeing them. This tag feels like distinctly un-WWE, if that makes sense. It's interesting to see them play around with this stuff with the different talent and such. But yeah, strong match for sure. I'm intrigued, guys. In terms of Act 2, what other matches would you recommend? Because I think it's, we kind of touched on it earlier. The Goldust character is different. He isn't necessarily trying to go out there and have 20-minute matches. But any obvious examples that come to mind?
Let's see.
If you can find them, he had those house show ladder matches with Sean. I think a few of them are on some of their unreleased DVD sets. Those were good. I mean, the match he had with Hall was great. And he had a few matches with Brett every once in a while on TV. And, 97 Brett, I don't know if there's been many.
There was a 97 match that was pretty good.
The Vader one that Oracle and I brought up.
Yep.
From Rumble 98. Yeah. He wrestled Mark Marrow at SummerSlam 96. I don't know if it's good, but I was at that show and I remember it. So
we're big Marrow guys. We can say it's good. Oracle and I say it's running a propaganda of ours. It's good stuff.
It depends on when you wanted to say this act ended, which would probably be like through the first TNA run, maybe.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Didn't he have a good match with Triple H on Raw?
He did. I think they had a good match. He has several other good matches with Booker and tag team. I think they have a good match with the Un-Americans at Christian and Storm version of the Un-Americans at SummerSlam of 02. That match is good. It's kind of a little bit few and far between here, but at the time it was different.
The character.
Yeah. And character. And of course, at one point in 98, he's like a Bible thumper.
Factual. There's a lot.
The main thing I remember about that was he kept walking through the crowd with the sign that he is coming, and Val Venus showed up during one of Dustin's matches with a sign that says "I have come."
he had the feud with Val Venus. Yeah,
I think it's Alex made the point a minute ago, kind of talking about this match's length, but it's like that the TV was very different for a lot of this time. And it's just it is what it is. I think there's a lot of guys from this time that would have less great matches than you'd expect for their talent level. It was just a different product. And but nonetheless, Goldust, an iconic character. We do have one more Goldust match, but it's a distinctly different time in his career. I do want to quickly, before we get to Act 3, it's interesting to me that, like, last time we did Joe, and Act 2 was clearly, like, the slimmest in terms of standout matches. I feel like this is not going to be a trend, right? It feels like it's just these two guys that we've kind of walked into this with, because, like, it feels like in a lot of ways Act 2 should be the sweet spot. Somehow we've wandered into our first two entries in the Grin Grappler being kind of a lull. Do you think there's... is that a coincidence, or is it going to be a weird trend that we kind of continue to discover here? I'm intrigued. Any read on that? Oracle, what do you think?
Maybe so. Depends on the wrestler. Depends on their. Dustin has a really unique trajectory in his career. Yes. He has a lot of highs and lows that span literally 35 years. So it's it also depends on length of career, right? Dustin's a 35-year veteran.
There is one common tie too, Oracle. You come across Vince Russo in that middle act, brother.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Only so much you can do. It will be interesting once we get to the names later, folks.
You know what? I like Dusty and Dustin versus Flair and Jarrett at Greed. That's a fun.
That's match. A lot of fun. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. That's a really interesting match time wise.
Never seen that match, but
there's some comedy to that one, brother. You'd enjoy that.
What you said, Joe, is exactly right, and something I never really thought about. Like, the Attitude Era was more just about kind of being there and playing the hits. It wasn't about having great matches. Mm-hmm. If you did, it was a bonus, but it didn't. Like, 98 is amazing, but if you think about the actual great matches of that year, it's just kind of like...
Like, if you were to look at, take an act like the New Age Outlaws, genuinely one of the most over acts of that whole era. At one point, they are the most over part of D-Generation X. I don't care what the history books decide. That's the case.
Yep.
For better or worse, that's the case. If we just try to come up with straight 2-on-2 tags that we've liked for the day, it's like, I don't fucking know, man. Who cares? It's different.
This reminds me of my story of Christmas in '99, right around the time I started becoming a wrestling fan.
Okay.
So, like, we were like, I don't know, just like goofing off in the house for Christmas Eve or whatever. And, like, it's me, my dad, and Dylan. And I was like, I'm going to be Triple H.
Sorry to hear that.
That's what I said, I was 7 years old, it was whatever. I just started watching. And Dylan was like, I'm going to be Mick Foley, Mankind. Dad goes, I'll be the Road Dogg, Jesse James. Dad's like strutting around. I'm the Road Dogg, Jesse James. He's just yelling. I was like, okay.
It's amazing that there you were.
Funny. It was
Christmas
funny.
99.
It's a funny childhood memory I have.
Just a young Triple H fan. If only you knew that eventually you'd be burying him on the day of his retirement.
About a month later, or maybe just weeks later, I liked Rikishi more, and when Triple H beat and when Rikishi lost,
that was
the match with Triple H, Dustin and I cried.
There you go.
And then from then on, we hated Triple H. So
the first 2 months of 2000, when Rikishi was on fire.
Yes, dude, he was so over. I'll never forget.
Rikishi and Too Cool made me, like, if there was like a scale or a ratio, the act that was the most over for the shortest period of time.
Red hot for a second there, red hot. They had the moment at the Rumble, right, in 2000, where like it's just all about them for that moment.
Yeah, and by SummerSlam, people are like, "Get on with it."
Pro wrestling, brother, it changes quick.
And then ultimately, I did it for The Rock.
I did it. Yeah, main event heel Rikishi, who lost his first. No, he beat The Rock on pay. Getting it. Discussion for another day.
Yeah, Rikishi Grin Grappler looms large, folks. It'll be on its way. So, okay, Act 3. Now, as you guys mentioned, the TNA run, and like in all seriousness, I think people have a lot of fun with the Black Rain stuff. I think Dustin is like legitimately devastated. He even did that stuff from what I can gather from how he talks about it. So bless him, man. He went through hell for a little bit there. There's this stretch that I honestly, and I told Oracle, I had never seen this match before in full. I've never seen any of the angle. And I explained this to Oracle, he was startled. But it's famous, right? This run where somehow, some way, the Rhodes family becomes like foes of the authority who are running the show.
You had never seen this match before?
I had never seen it in front
Wow.
of me.
It blew me away when he told me
You
that.
know,
last night.
sometimes like there are matches that are accepted great, classics, and you just kind of you log them in your brain. It's like, oh, that's a great match. And like, I'd never actually sat and watched it, and I realized it when I was watching the video package. And that angle where Tall Paul punched Dusty, oh my god, that was incredible! And he was like crying and
Dude,
stuff.
It's amazing. And like Dusty's like, "No, Daddy, you don't have to do this," and he's like, "I'm sorry," and then hits him.
It ruled. It ruled.
One day I want to do more of this stuff because Oracle's a huge proponent of it, and I can tell there's a lot of good, but I just didn't see any of it. It's a shame.
I've always said this, Alex, and I think you would agree with me somewhat that from like the night after WrestleMania 29 until, or roughly until the night after WrestleMania 30 is like one of the best years in the history of the company. Just because
It's
the in-ring
interesting
was
for
so
sure.
good.
I mean, SummerSlam during 2013 is my favorite wrestling show ever.
Right.
And yeah, it's
Warts and all, it's
fascinating point in
great.
time.
It's great.
What's that?
I said warts and all. That 1 year period is like,
Dude, the Shield just changed
yeah,
everything.
yeah. Every week, dude. Like every week.
With
There's
that
a
in
match.
mind, good.
I was just gonna say, there's a match in the summer of 2013. That's the Shield against like the entire babyface roster on Raw. That's absolutely incredible.
Yes. And
Not
Roman
on level
and
with this,
Titus
but it's
O'Neil
good.
have like an amazing standoff at one point.
That we're gonna get into here, but that act is like maybe the last true hit they had, like a true generational era-defining hit. It's really special. Oracle, I know how passionate you're about his time. Set the stage for us here with Battleground 2013. There is a long and winding story and angle. Explain it, and then feel free to get into the match yourself, pal. Go ahead.
Okay. So as Alex pointed out, one of the all-time great wrestling pay-per-views, SummerSlam 2013. The ending, of course, very famous. Daniel Bryan beats John Cena with the running knee. Big celebration. Triple H pedigrees him. Randy Orton comes out, cashes in, so on and so forth. Comes the big Daniel Bryan versus the Authority angle. Cody Rhodes had just turned babyface after feuding with Damian Sandow, splitting up from him over the Money in the Bank briefcase, and they have a fun match at SummerSlam 2013 as well. And Cody was part of the babyface group that sort of defied the Authority and stood out, stood by the side of Daniel Bryan when he was being screwed. And Cody was punished for that. Triple H and Stephanie took the whole aired their issues out on live TV and punished all these wrestlers, put like Dolph in like a 3-on-1 handicap with a Shield and so on. And they financially and imprisoned Big Show, whatever the hell it was, some shit like that. And, got to see Paul's acting chops. And Cody, his punishment was to, he would be fired. All he would have to do, as Triple H sarcastically put, was beat Randy Orton, the face of the WWE, Randy Orton, who was the champion at the time. Cody and Randy have a really good TV match. Randy beats him. Triple H fires Cody after the match. The next week, Dustin comes back in Goldust face paint and says, I want to get my brother's job back. He faces Randy in another really good match. Randy wins.
That match, yes.
And Dusty ends up getting involved and has the famous talking segment where he, quiet Stephanie, and that was apparently a heated thing. And that all leads to eventually the Rhodes get called down, and like it just shows the video package. They get called to Raw. They have a meeting, and we get basically Shield as the soldiers for the Authority. Take out the Rhodes family once and for all. If the Rhodes lose, Dustin and Cody don't get to come back, and Dusty is gone for good. So there's a big type of story here. They do a really good job of commentary and in the storyline about how Dusty wasn't there for Dustin back then, but he was for Cody, and now they're all three together, and it's kind of a big bond and big moment. And it's funny because this match takes place in Buffalo, New York, which is like would not be something we call like a Rhodes town, right? Like it's not like Texas or not like NWA, Carolinas, or anything like that.
Greensboro.
Yep, Greensboro. But the crowd eats us up. It's amazing. But yeah, that's kind of the setup for this match.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Just
it's
very quickly,
one of the all-time great stories that they've told in the last 10 years.
absolutely. Now, just very quickly, I want it, and bless his heart. I'm not trying, Isn't it fascinating? You just mentioned a minute ago, Cody was alongside Damian Sandow, and they did this
Team Rhodes
program,
Scholars.
and it's like they were a hot act as a team. It's just extraordinary how different career paths take guys, And like,
Yeah.
I think Sandow, he seems like he's fun with what he's doing.
They had some good matches with Ray and Sin Cara.
Right?
Like, I remember them having some good matches at the end of 2012.
Sandow's one of those guys that like. Oh, sorry, Joe. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. Go ahead. You're fine.
He's one of those guys that makes you check the timeline every time they're like, "Oh, they're wasting this guy." Was because like Sandow, everyone said they should have done more with him, and then he got to go to TNA and show what he could do, and it was just kind of like, I don't think we missed much.
It's wild because there was a real, like, I completely agree with you, but I definitely think there's a window where if they do something, maybe it does work. Like it's timing. But what separates a guy with these guys is Cody. I mean, we're 3 weeks removed from him making this epic Mania return, right? And it's fascinating how things work out. Oracle, fabulous job setting the stage. I want to quickly reiterate what I just said. When you see this Shield act in motion, you remember just how hot this thing was.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, they're all top guys. I would love to explore. One day we may do this as a separate podcast. I'd love to explore the way they ended this act because they all were going to be top guys regardless. But man, it feels like it could have been more. It just does to me. I'll never shake that kind of instinctual read. There's a lot here. Great match, Oracle. I want to go back to you because I did cut you off. The match itself, I know it's one you absolutely love. Speak to it, pal. Go ahead.
Yeah, so like this is just it's so perfect. Dustin is like flawless in this, even in his execution is amazing.
Yeah.
There's one part where like early on in the match he jumps up and hits like in the shine, he jumps up and hits like a reverse cross body and it fucking rules.
I thought he was gonna do a moonsault for a second. I was like, oh shit.
Like
he doesn't even like I wrote that in my notes because he does the thing. He like real quick checks between his legs, but then he doesn't even look. He just dives into it. He goes
right, exactly. Ambrose and Dusty are great seconds. Dusty's great, like getting the crowd up. At the hot tag later on in the match. Ambrose is great shit talking and all that stuff. Like the Shield were so good as like stooges early on in those shines in their matches, and like. That was one thing that Rollins was really good at was like Rollins is a pretty good tag worker. I just can't stand him as a singles wrestler. And I really don't like the guy in general, but like as a tag worker, I think he is pretty solid. Colby, he's an idiot. But the like that was really good stuff. But Dustin's face and peril stuff, man, was his selling, his timing, the comebacks. Like all the setup to the hot tag was incredible. It really got the crowd going because the crowd was into it, but like Buffalo, like
what
they really like Dustin's selling and babyface work got the crowd super into it. Cody's hot tag was incredible. Cody had a great hot tag.
He did a muscle buster.
Yeah,
yeah.
I put that in my notes specifically for you, Joe. I was going to ask you to rate Cody's muscle buster.
Yeah, he did do a muscle buster. The finish is outstanding. The way they set it up, they shot it well, which is rare for the time. Like Dusty and Ambrose going at Dusty pulling his belt off and hitting the elbow, and the plate goes unglued. Just a great. And Dusty's like whipping the belt and scaring Ambrose. Just an incredible. And like I said, I couldn't believe how. I mean, Kevin Dunn must have remembered how to actually do production for once. I mean, that's
the worst part about that guy. When you watch this, you're
that's
like,
a rarity
he does know what he's doing.
That's a rarity with the Beaver, But he deserves it. Misogynist piece of shit. But yeah, this was outstanding. The finish, after the Crossroads, which was set up, hit perfectly. The big hug, the celebration was incredible. Yeah. Arn coming out and celebrating.
Wasn't that something?
First, I was like, what? But ultimately, it felt right for some reason. Yeah. Like all the mid Carter. I mean, it was mostly mid Carter, but I get it. You don't want all the main eventers coming out there necessarily. But like everybody coming out, all the producers. That's what really added to it was all the old old school producers coming out. And Arn was legitimately looked like thrilled and was like laughing and crying and hugging the Rhodes.
Brother,
and,
that needs to be a thing again. Babyface is emptying out to celebrate is one of the coolest things.
I forgot how good the post match was. I was like, this is an incredible post match. The commentary was great.
Yeah.
I've said before, Cole Lawler and JBL were a good team at this time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And like the great part is like after they go like after the celebration, they actually go to like the three in the booth and they're like, that fucking ruled. They were like, that was like awesome. Like and I'm pretty sure it was genuine because like that's like that's one of the great stories WWE has told in a long, long time, and it's incredible. The whole presentation is like 5 stars. The match itself may not be like 5 if you're into that crap, but like, it's special.
It doesn't need to be.
I love that match.
Yeah,
exactly. I agree with that. Yeah, the story is what matters the most, and as long as the match is at least solid, which was was a great match.
Oh yeah,
it works and delivered. Just one of the best. One of the best WWE matches and stories of the last really 20 years, to be honest.
You said something there that I actually had in my notes. I think part of this match's greatest feat is that the crowd they're there. Mm-hmm. They're not red hot to begin.
Right.
But when they take the crowd shot after the pin, it looks like an 80s crowd. There are people jumping up and down.
And look, Cody was really good as a hot tag in this.
Yes, he was.
In this team. Cody had. Remember, it was actually there was actually a double heat here.
Yes, there was.
Cody's heat did not have much heat, but that's not Cody's strength. When Dustin came in, this is where with the Dustin, with the show being about Dustin, he brought that crowd in here with his selling and the Shield were of course incredible by this point, but it's just his babyface work was so special here.
You mentioned the first match about him working the apron. When the only thing they came up for in the first little portion was the "We Want Goldust" chants because he was getting them going from the apron.
Right,
you could feel it.
Exactly.
One other thing too, before we throw this around, Dustin's known for his punch. On this night, his punch was somehow better than it ever was any other time. It was absurd. The sound his right hand was making in this one, it was like it leveled out. He's one of the all-time great right hand punchers ever, but it sounded extraordinary here. Bobby, this feels like you saw this first round, right? Bobby, you was watching it this time.
Yeah.
Rewatching it here, man. What did you think?
Yeah, I love the feud. I liked how the video kind of encapsulated everything. It was nice to remember all that stuff. And then, just kind of when the match got going, it did take a little bit for the crowd to get into it. But once they got them, man, it just kept going. I'm glad you brought up with the Shield because, we remember how good they were, but you actually see them. Yeah. And it's just, they were such a force, man. And, again, just the presentation, just to do this, it wasn't something that they had really done, this style of thing, and to just kind of bring it in, it was great, and it was still great today. I'm glad we included this one because, this is a special match.
It also has one of my favorite weird wrestling things that no one else mentions or pops for that I love, which is when Cody has his back to Seth and the crowd shrieks he's oh, he's behind you. One of those things that when a crowd's really into it doesn't happen enough, especially now, but I adore. Alex, I know we've talked an awful lot about this, but just anything to add on the special tag? Go ahead.
Yeah. So just looking at my notes, you'll have covered a bunch of the beats. So refreshing to see a normal wrestling promo before this match, the promo the three of them cut. I had forgotten about the era of Darth Maul Dustin when he painted his face like Darth Maul, but Dusty just fucking rules. For the out of work people in this country, that whole thing. And Lawler, man, especially post 98 Lawler's just been phoning it in, and he just says whatever he wants. And there was something that made me laugh so hard when American Dream hits. It's just quiet, the crowd pops and commentary's not saying anything, and the doon Lawler just yells on commentary, "More cowbell," and then no one says anything. It's just dead silence. The iconic shot of the three, they used it for the Dusty Memorial package when the three of them come out and do the Shield thing. It's just, these are the types of things you watch and you're like, hey, I might actually be proud to be a wrestling fan. And then the next segment happens. You're like, no, never mind. But I did laugh on commentary. At some point in the match, Cole's like, Goldust, an important part of the Attitude Era, which of course was the most important time in sports entertainment. And it's just kind of like, why would you say that? Then why am I caring about what I'm watching right now? And what else do I have here? Okay, two other things. Three, excuse me. I love that it calls for Cody to bust out the moves he learned from Bob Holly. Like there's so much on the line that he has to use all these moves out of his repertoire.
Good call.
Roman didn't know what he was going to be. There's a point in the match where he's on the apron and Cody or Dustin hits him, and for no reason he just takes a complete flat back onto the floor. Like he just falls like a sack of shit, doesn't protect himself at all. No one had smartened him up yet. Hey, you're going to make some money in a few years, so just take it easy. And then the last thing I wanted to say, I was watching this, and I'm kind of with Oracle for me, all Tyler Black, Seth Rollins matches blend together. There's two that stand out. This one and the SummerSlam 2019 match with Brock. Okay. And I might think this is the best match Seth Rollins is a part of. I know some people are probably shrieking right now or citing something he did with a bunch of backflips, but like everyone in this match is perfect. And I think the other players obviously have had better matches elsewhere, but this is like an outstanding achievement. One of the best WWE matches of its decade, and I think personally it might be my favorite match involving Seth Rollins.
There is Dusty. Dusty was a very dramatic character, and he would add a drama that often didn't belong in wrestling, quite frankly. But it has to be said, there is an emotional weight to this family coming together that is like borderline embarrassing to admit. I feel like. Because it's so over the top and it's so silly, but you can't pretend you don't feel it, right? Like, and, there's a lot of truth to what they're talking about with that family. And it is like a weird dynamic. And Dusty's smile when Goldust does his weird, like, fucking thing.
Yes.
And that moment's special because we know what Dusty thought with that gimmick initially.
Mm-hmm.
And when the baby faces come out, especially when you see Arn, when you're doing the process we're doing, where the first match had Arn there, and, like, I don't know, man. There's a feel-good, triumphant human element to this that is like wrestling can very rarely tap into without. You can't do it often. It's special stories, right? There's, there was probably people there, and Buffalo limits it somewhat, but there are absolutely fans in that building that was watching WWF when Dusty was there, and there's other fans that were watching when Goldust was there, and there were some fans that only knew Cody and they knew these two other dudes that were Cody's family, but like. That's the beauty of that stuff, man. And these windows, they're not all the time. It's when you see them all together, it's hard not to think about what like follows. Dusty's gone 2 years later? Less than 2 years later, I think Dusty's gone. It's wild. It's wild to think about. And Cody leaves in 3 years or less than 3 years. 6 years after this, they have that match that we're about to talk about, where the crowd starts with the Dusty chant. It's remarkable, sad, all of the above to think about what's, kind of what that family it has ahead and what it's been through already. It's just, I don't know, man. There's emotional weight to this that honestly doesn't, like, you can't star rate it. Like, it's a great match.
On the other side, you got 3 future WWE champions, too. It's just like a very decorated match all around.
Yeah, I think, Bob, you tweeted earlier, right, Bob? Like, some of the most important guys of the last decade. Like,
yeah, all 6 of them, really.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is interesting. Someone in the chat said it too. I think Reese mentioned it. The Crossroads is like one of the best Crossroads he's ever done. I know some in the middle they like got elevated. It looked extraordinary. Okay. Final match. Before we get to this, Goldust has, that run continues some. Bobby mentioned earlier, has a team with R-Truth. It feels like Dustin is winding down to an eventual role as a producer or a coach, right? He's Goldust. He's a comedy character. There's a couple matches in 2018 that Bobby referenced. Got the Cena one being the most famous, where it appeared time may have been up, and if it was, there was no shame in that. He was approaching 50. He'd had a great career. Meanwhile, Cody's out there doing his thing. AEW comes to be. Double or Nothing, 2019. Mere weeks before the match is announced, Dustin leaves. There is a whole weird drama where he says that he has not left, because I believe he wanted to make it more dramatic when they announced it. Reporters were saying, no, he's definitely left. I think he said, no, I'm still there. Of course he had left. They created a narrative about the Attitude Era and Cody trying to get rid of that generation. But the thing I remember most about this match that I think people have forgotten, Dustin hadn't wrestled for over 11 months before this match. He had the knee surgeries. And after his last chance at WWE, I was really alarmed about what they were going to be able to produce here. I have to say. I didn't realize how much the crowd was going to be into it. And I was just concerned. It had been so long since Dustin, it's a year out, man. Like, that's a long time for a guy who's 50, especially. As soon as they get in there and they're Dusty chance, and this is awesome chance for the lockout stuff, they're not going to blow it from there. Bobby, I'm intrigued from your perspective. Try to paint the picture here for where we're at AEW's first show. I know you were a WWE Centric fan then, but I know you love Dustin. So where was you at kind of before we got into this one?
Yeah, it was interesting because again, I was kind of just convinced that he was done and it wasn't going to be worth kind of following him, which isn't the best way to handle things in hindsight. And I hadn't seen this match till today, so
there you go.
It was a revolution for me.
It is one of the most special matches that AEW will ever do, and it will never be surpassed in that regard because it's on the first show. So much to say about that. I'll kind of circle back. Alex, I'll go to you first. You tweeted earlier you believe this is still the greatest match in AEW history. Talk about it, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you could also make the argument that AEW was going to have success no matter what, but I think this set the stage and set a precedent of emotion and match quality that wasn't Omega and Jericho the main event on this show?
Yeah.
And they did the ECW thing where it was okay, but then Ambrose showed up and blah, blah, blah. But this match, I think really was a stamp of
agree.
This shit's legit. And yeah, I mean Cody's back with Papa Vince now, so there is a certain level of hilarity watching his entrance on this.
Oh yeah.
With the throne and everything. One thing that's funny too is that I don't know where the misdirection was, but the camera filmed the wrong tunnel. So it's just filming the other tunnel, and then the camera just turns around and Cody's out there already, and it's shit, we missed where we were supposed to go. But I remember laughing in real time at this. I was like, "What are you doing, man? Sorry, Triple H didn't think you were The Rock, dude." But it has a whole new thing about it now. Completely forgot Earl Hebner's the referee.
Same.
Which I feel that adds a certain level of legitimacy to he's as big of Carney as anybody, but still in the zeitgeist of wrestling, it's oh shit, it's Earl Hebner. JR still cared. JR called this match, I think, with a certain level of fervor and enthusiasm. Who's it? Alex Marvez was the other guy. He was not good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he didn't last long in that role. Bless his heart. He was not good at all.
You got Brandy out there doing her thing. You got the tried and true spot of the ref ejecting someone from ringside. So that's when the crowd really gets into it. You have the insane blade job from Dustin that I think also helped to set a precedent for AEW of this. Yeah, it's not just going to be indie bullshit or your typical WWE stuff, and it's just great. It's like the Shield match we were just talking about. There's a level of emotion in it, and I know people like to second guess Cody and say he's not really that good, and yeah, on average he may not be the best wrestler in the world, but I think there's something that can't be ignored. This match and the one we just talked about, how emotionally engaging they are, and he's a part of it. That, I think that plays into it. And it's a match that you could have ran in the NWA in 1984 and the crowd would have been just as into it. It's they do a couple things like homages to previous matches that weren't really the norm back then, but even the overplayed I punch you, now you punch me, and then we go back and forth, that's kept concise, and they both, especially Dustin, have such great punches that it looks good. And really the only thing is when Cody tries to do the Kudo driver, the cop killer at the end, it's just kind of a dud. I think it was too late in the match to try to do that because they were both tired, but it's just a classic wrestling match and has that level of emotion, and the post-fight speech is great, and it's definitely for what AEW became a very historically significant match, and I think the best match they've done. I honestly forgot how good it was. I remembered it being great, but it's just an outstanding piece of business.
You know, rightly framed it as everyone remembers the blood, but like there is one shot where he's on his side and it is like just like it's leaking out, and Excalibur like screams into the mic, and Jim Ross is like, "Yep, blood, fuck it, man." I don't know.
Had to make Dusty proud, baby.
Exactly, man. And it's just drama's the word, isn't it? Well, you know what makes this match so magical is like I think all of us are kind of. It's difficult to pinpoint what makes it so like special. Like you can try it, but it's hard. There's a certain point in the match. They do the figure four spot where Dustin turns him over, and then Dustin hits the code red, and like they're a double down. The place just stands up and starts showing AEW, and it's like you can feel it on rewatch, but it still is. It still makes gives you chills. It's remarkable. Oracle, a very famous match, a lot of blood, which I know you're big on. What did you think, man? Watching it back?
Oh, this holds up. This is just as good as I remember it being.
Yeah.
Dustin's performance here is just incredible. Probably, honestly, one of his 5 or so best performances ever.
Yeah.
Just because of the magnitude and the importance of the stage that they were on, and just I love the early stuff. Like they did the callback to, they do callbacks to to Gold Dust and callbacks to Stardust, and they do all the stuff like that, and they start with the wrestling, and Brandy hits a spear and she gets thrown out, and then the blood happens, and it's just Cody's working over Dustin, and Dustin bleeds, and they do like the power slam for a near fall, the code red for near. It's just building and building to it, and like the figure four spot is awesome. Just an awesome, great match. One of the best matches in the history of AEW. Maybe still number one, for sure.
Yeah.
I think I
Could
might
have used a
agree with
Young Buck
Alex
selling
there.
his back a bit more. I think is what the could have used. No, you mentioned Brandy with the spear. I forgot to call out, and Dustin. I get when he went to the turnbuckle. I think that was the idea of how he got cut.
Yeah.
And he hadn't, ran the razor at that point.
Right,
So
right,
I love he's just holding that part of his head before Brandy spears him. So it's masterful. That's the type of shit. Devin, we watch enough bad indie wrestling. That's the type of shit where someone would just be like fumbling in front of the crowd trying to get the razor out.
Exactly. Or, if you're Roddy Piper, just pull it out in the middle of a cage match with Bruno and just
there you go, brother.
But that's Piper and that rules because it's Piper. But like this was great shit, man. Like that like their strike exchange that Alex pointed out was like really believable, and then they're like crazy, like sloppy, like double clothesline, like
where they like
weird,
swing in the air,
like Spanish fly almost. It looked fucking awesome because it felt like a desperation spot, and I love when desperation spots like that look like really sloppy and unclean because it's more believable.
They're exhausted. They're covering blood.
Than it is to be, exactly. Instead of like hitting something that's like so beautiful and clean. Sometimes sloppiness is really good in wrestling, and that was a good example of that.
Yeah.
The cop killer was maybe a little bit too much.
Far too safe.
Yeah. Just a great finishing stretch, some great near falls there at the end. So you traded some crossroads. Cody hit another one after the cop killer to win. Incredible post match, really good promo. This was absolutely this coupled with Moxley debuting
huge
at the end of the show were the 1-2 punches that AEW, as Alex says, they would have been big anyways, I think. But it's always important to execute and deliver, and they did with that 1-2 punch on this show.
There's a particular ingredient this match achieved too, where it basically showed you the promotion's willingness to have stylistic range, to be a variety show, and that opened the door to a lot of us that wasn't pumped to watch the Elite Like internet. Now I've grown to admire and love those guys, but in 2019 I did not care about what those dudes were doing. This was basically AEW telling a dork like me that loves some old WCW that like, oh, I actually may have something here, like,
Yeah.
and that's been a big thing for the promotion. Like, I think, Alex, I know you're not a big AEW guy, but I think one thing that everyone can agree on with AEW is they offer range, right? Like,
Yeah.
like there's something you can enjoy on their show.
And it's nice to see, like, and even I can say that, like, someone who considers himself a vampire, as a phrase that I steal from the great Phil Schneider.
Yes.
And Good Helmet and those like them. I'm a vampire in terms of wrestling fandom. I love blood, but sometimes AEW can have been excessive with that. But it's so nice to see that again on a national stage and like have it in those matches and have it in like a Punk or an MJF or like Dustin randomly having a bunkhouse tag with QT against Butcher and Blade, or
we love that match.
Ty J versus Penelope and the Bunny, which I think we all enjoyed. I know Alex enjoyed that a good bit as well. So like it's just awesome to see that. It's nice to have that back. Like I don't know, it's just it adds realism and that sort of that real violence that sickos like me appreciate, I guess.
It seems so like unbelievable, but that era of Raw we watched that tag match from, there were dudes fucking going 8 on the Muda scale every other week on there.
Oh, I know, yeah, dude. Like every match, like every other week, Sean was bleeding buckets.
Like in the lead into that JR main event, I think JR did a blade job on Raw.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, it's just. And Vince now tries to act like he's above it all. Fuck him.
Oh, I know. Ruthless Aggression, that whole period from like, really from, because the Attitude didn't even have that much. Attitude was more about language and sexual content and stuff.
Sex.
This like Ruthless Aggression had like fucking Cactus and Orton and Cactus and Flair and like Flair
Brock
was
Lesnar
working
murdering a kid with one leg on TV.
Yeah. Brock like killing Zach Gallen and throwing him downstairs and like it was just crazy shit.
Bobby, you set the stage for us neatly. What did you think of the match? Your first time watching it?
Yeah, it lived up to the hype, and that's kind of what I was looking for. Like, they told a good story. The pre-match stuff with the throne is funny now. It was probably funnier then than I gave it credit for too, but different time. And it just it worked, man. I'm glad. And like even just doing this in one afternoon where you're just watching 2 hours of matches, it's cool to see Dustin kind of finally get his big singles moment. It's even cooler when you're watching it over 20 years or whatever, but even just in a short spurt like this, it was really cool to see that kind of how it progressed, and the and just his AEW run in general. He's been used perfectly, and he's still very good.
This kind of is an immediate encapsulation of why 2 promotions is necessary, because like you could have done this at like Death Before Dishonor, but like you're out of your mind. You think it's as cool as it is in fucking MGM Grand or wherever they did this. Like this is why national promotion matters, because look, it would have been cool if they got their Mania match, but there is no way you think it's as good if it's Stardust versus Goldust. Like this is why different places are best for different things and different best for different guys. So it perfectly captures that, and I agree with you, Bob. I think. I don't know for sure, but from what I can gather from watching a few interviews, like this is what Dustin considers his greatest night because of what it represented, and he has been great since. It's a magical match. A few other ones from this kind of act, and again, feel free to chip in after. But the Orton match you mentioned earlier, Oracle from TV, I adore that. Another one you just mentioned, the bunkhouse, with QT versus Butcher and Blade. There was a TNT title match with Brody Lee that was awesome on TV. And I do remember vividly it did an incredible number. And there was this whole trend of people trying to figure out why Dustin was one of the biggest draws on AEW TV, which was a lot of fun. The match with Bryan Danielson from, I think, want to say October from the World Title Tournament. And then literally a week ago, we had the CM Punk match, which was great. Which other one? Any other ones that I've missed? I'm certain I have, but any others jump off from this third act?
I mean, a bunch of the Cody tags are a lot of fun and good. That was 2013 WWE TV, which was like literally there's like 10 great matches a week. That's not an exaggeration in that period. But like Cody and Dustin had good matches against the Wyatts, had good matches against had the great title change against the Shield a week after the match we watched. It's got a really great Fatal 4-Way tag at TLC 2013 with Rybaxel. And
Now you're just
Big
making
Show
shit
and
up,
Ray. Big Show and Ray. What's that?
You're just making shit up at this
Oh,
point.
I'm not making it up, brother. That's good shit.
Oh, the Dustin, Cody, Ray. I can't remember it's the only good match from the 2013 Survivor Series.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yep.
they take on the Shield and the Real Americans.
Yep, that match was excellent.
Goldust has one of my all-time favorite Royal Rumble moments, just in the sense of like, you have to like understand what you're watching, but like, it's the 2015 Rumble match, one of the worst matches of all time. Roman comes in and just starts cleaning house, and I guess the instruction that was given to everybody is just let Roman eliminate you. And so Goldust runs at Roman, windmilling his arms and screaming. He goes, ah! And then like Roman just gently like throws him over the top rope. It's just absolutely beautiful.
That's awesome. Ag 3 is kind of stacked, isn't it, for Dustin? Dustin's 53 now. Like he's still at it,
like,
brother.
The names, the catalog of matches that he has is way more interesting in terms of just like on a piece of paper. I'm like, that dude, he wrestled him?
I think part of it, honestly, is like Tony Khan just loves that dude, right? And that's part of him being a message board guy. Like, I'll never forget, we did a show after he announced the world title tournament, and we were so fired up that he did Brian and Dustin and Brian in round 1. And then, like, I got off the show and went online and people were like, why the hell is Dustin in this tournament? It's like, because he's going to rule, you idiots. That's why. It's awesome. So there you go, folks. That is Act 3. Last time out, we tried to rank the matches. I'm very concerned about my pal, Contrarian Alex, here as we venture into ranking these. I do not want to disparage the famed backlot brawl, but I think we may have a conflict ahead. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go around the room here. And I would like you guys to pick your favorite of these 6 matches. Chat, feel free to do the same. Your favorite of the 6. Bobby, I'll go to you first.
I think my favorite would probably be the tag match against the Shield.
Oracle?
I'm with Bobby.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, backlot brawl, but like the difference with this one as opposed to the first Grin Grappler we did is that middle part of Joe. Like the Aries match was awesome, but it had that not even that, the angle match, the AJ match, and the Finn match, I just could not get into. And then this one, like, I was just like pumped watching all these matches.
Yeah.
And so I think the lineup here was great. So I don't mean me picking one of my all-time favorite matches to make it seem like any of these are lesser than, because obviously the last 2 we discussed, the Shield tag and the Cody match, are 2 of like the best matches of their decade.
To show the range, my favorite is the first one we did. I just love that Clash tag. It's
nice.
I absolutely adore that match. But with 2 votes, the Shield tag takes the top spot. Bobby, what would you have in the 2 slot?
Probably Cody and Dustin, but I did also love that first tag match we watched. But I'll just put Cody and Dustin here.
The Oracle of Wrestling, what you got?
Probably the first tag.
Okay, so that's 2 votes the first tag. Alex, backlot brawl obviously slides for you, right? So this is going to be a real conflict ahead here, I fear.
Yeah, I think my number 2 would be the Shield tag. Okay,
so with that in mind, I guess so that would make the Dangerous Alliance tag here, and then we're at the free spot. Are we fine with putting Alex's his number 1 seed here in at the free? I'm fine with it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Saying that, Cody Dustin's just slid dramatically. Oh, fuck it, it's Cody.
I'd put that at 4.
Cody Dustin?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think the Raw tag is probably the last, and that match is really good. But that's more of a hidden gem type of thing.
It is worth noting for any of you think we're nuts. Like there's some tag team nuts on this too, right? Like I have a real bias to any great tag team wrestling. So if Cody Dustin's your 1, I'm cool with that. So it looks like we're going Shield, the Enforcers, Backlot Brawl, Cody Dustin, Vader Raw tag.
Mhm.
Are we all content with that?
Mhm.
Okay.
All these
Keeping
matches,
in mind, they're all great matches.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I genuinely recommend them because the big difference too is like those Joe matches. I enjoyed the third act more than you did, Alex, but like they were slogs, right? They were long world title matches. This is a breeze to watch, man. Like the run time is short on almost all of them. The longest match is Cody Dustin, which is like 22.
Mhm.
Most of them in like that 15 range. Easy watch. I recommend all the matches. This was a lot of fun. Just to kind of put a bow on it. Dustin Rhodes, goes without saying, it's been an absolute pleasure to watch for over 3 decades now, which is absurd. Still not done yet. I think obviously, we're nearing that, but he showed against Punk there's a lot left. I'm going to take this time to beat that drum one last time, brothers. Billy Corgan, I know you're watching. It's time. There's a story to be told with him winning that 10 pounds of gold, and you want to sell any tickets? That's the way to go, bro. But that's just me. This was a lot of fun. Now, you guys ready to learn about next month's candidates? Because this is a list, folks. This is a lineup. Here we go.
Hell yeah.
The options for May's Grin Grappler are as follows: Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Owen Hart, William Regal, or his fellow Blackpool Combat Club member, the American Dragon Bryan Danielson.
That is a spectrum.
All 4, I think, would be great episodes.
Yeah.
Bobby, what is your ideal winner?
I genuinely don't have a preference between those 4, I don't think. I think any of the 4 that win, we're going to have a good time and going to see some stuff I haven't seen, going to see some stuff I have seen, and it's just going to be fun. I don't have a preference.
Oracle, are you with me and swaying towards Great Britain on this one? Regal, what do you think?
Oh man, Regal would be awesome because I'd be like, we're definitely watching one of the Hashimoto matches if it's Regal. Because I don't think a lot of people know about those matches.
He would fit a similar bill to this episode, I feel, don't you? Like, kind of, there's some nice hidden gems we could do. There's some more famous stuff at the end. Be interesting. Alex, what one stands out for you of those 4 very different names?
I kind of want The Rock just so we can all do competing Rock impressions. Whoa, 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 like stuff like that. But
do the Charleston.
Honestly, I think bearded 97, 98 Owen Hart is the kind of very underappreciated run he had. So I think that could be potentially interesting to do some Owen Hart. But I mean, yeah, Brian, you're going to have some awesome matches sprinkled in there. And I think personally I might side with Owen, but any of those would be an absolute joy.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I want to quickly make this clear because Reese asked, and Oracle and I kind of figured this out last night. If Brian wins, we're not going to do AEW simply because we've covered it in real time. Like the Grin has been a thing since he went to AEW. So what the chapters would be like mid 2000s, best in the world, Ring of Honor champ, top babyface in WWE, and then coming back. So you get the last act would be the Kofi match and the AJ PC match. So just so we talk about matches we haven't talked about on the air. So keep that in mind when you vote. Rock, Owen Hart, William Regal, Bryan Danielson. Okay. Second Grin Grappler in the books. Bobby, any final words or promotions?
No, this was a lot of fun. Really glad that we've come up with this. We come together once a month to do it. Watch the Late Night Grin tomorrow night.
Factual. I'm sure we'll talk about something over there. Oracle, any final words?
No. This was a great show. I said no, and then I went on to spiel pop.
Yeah.
But it's been a great show. I'm super excited for next month. Got the Late Night Grin tomorrow at 11 p.m. or 11:05 p.m. Eastern.
Samoa Joe match, brother.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Prestigious Ring of Honor television title on the line over on the AEW Rampage.
Where the final moment will be Satnam Singh and Samoa Joe colliding.
Dude, how incredible was it when he won that belt and Jim Ross goes, his long quest for the television title was ended? They didn't have television when he was in Good Lord.
Randy Titus has been ducking him for years.
Tremendous stuff. Alex, we say it every time, the Contrarians, great podcast. Please promote it, pal.
Oh, well, as always, thank you. We are thecontrarians.com. film podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Contrarian Prime. Basically, a continuous argument with the Rotten Tomatoes scoring system. We have a Patreon as well, in which we're doing a current 5-part miniseries on the 10-year retrospective of The Rock and John Cena from WrestleMania 28, as well as the movies they've made. I do want to plug here, we're going to be a part of a podcasting event towards the end of May called Live Stream for the Cure. It's a weekend-long podcasting event, not unlike the Grinathon, in the sense that it's raising money for cancer research. You can go to livestreamforthecure.com to get more information on it. It's going to be from May 19th to May 21st. On the 21st at 4 Central, 5 Eastern, that's when the Contrarians will be on. We're looking, I think, half hour, an hour. We're looking to raise $200 during the hour that we're going to be on. We're going to be discussing the highs and lows of the film careers of, I think we decided Robert De Niro, Kate Winslet, Denzel Washington, and Cameron Diaz. So should be a fun hour. There's a live chat on there, just like with this. So if y'all are open that day, be sure to check it out. Give money to a good cause. Gentlemen, as always, I am indebted for y'all letting me come on here and plug my shit.
We absolutely need to push that when the time comes too. That is awesome. Folks, Late Night Grin on Twitter, at Late Night Grin is where you'll see the poll for the next Grin Grappler. Guys, thanks for joining. This has been an absolute pleasure. I'll be back tomorrow on this very platform with Jay Shell for Retire the Rankings, where we're going to list our wrestlers of the week and argue very, very much. Then the world famous Late Night Grin after Rampage, where Oracle goes 2 1/4 on Sam Joe versus Trent Barretta. A great night ahead. This has been fun. But in the meantime, enjoy this outro, folks. All hell.